It can be difficult to see where the cutting edge is. Our last performer of the night happily lives on that jagged precipice, at the interface between computer technology and media studies. He describes himself as a keen promoter of CGI and game development in the Waikato. The world has come a ways since 20 cents bought you 3 rounds of Space Invaders down at the dairy. Sean Castle.
Wow, I got off lightly as well. Okay, so today, this evening, I'd like to talk to you about something that I'm really interested in at the moment, and that's procedural content generation. Basically what that is using computers to make fantastic and wonderful new things. We've got a fractal here, which shows using different rule sets and things like that to make a pretty picture, but we can push the technology much further these days. Okay, infinite monkey theorem. The infinite monkey theorem states that if you've got enough monkeys and they've got enough typewriters, eventually they'll come up with the complete works of Shakespeare, which is how I like to describe how computers can be used to brute force things that we like. This is from Disney's Tangled, and just to give you an idea of where you might have seen procedural content generation before, is in the generation of these forests, they used algorithms to just fill the whole forest with aesthetically pleasing-looking three-dimensional trees, so that they didn't actually need to do them by hand. This is another example of using real life to model a synthetic kind of procedural generation for environments. They've used the Grand Canyon here as a model, base model, to procedurally generate an abstract shape there. Sorry, I can't really remember why I put this in here, but this is a good example of when you can have some content that you can configure in the experience. In this case, it's the video game Mass Effect 3, and it looks like someone's pushed all the sliders to the right there and make the guy's face a little bit weird. I remember now. Okay, so this is from Skyrim, and where they used procedural content generation in this was for the generation of all of the mountains and all the terrain and all the hills and things like that. So the first thing that they did was they used a computer based on real knowledge of how mountains look and things like that to generate the landscape, and then they would go in and they would tweak them by hand. And this is for the generation within the context of a predetermined narrative framework, which brings me to... Yeah, correct. Vogler and Campbell. So we understand the structure of narrative as well. So there's no reason why we can't use this knowledge to generate algorithms to also create interesting stories or random stories. Can't talk about procedural content generation without talking about Minecraft. So this one's got heavy exposure. I'd be surprised if most people haven't seen this before, but it's a good example of how we can generate 3D worlds. And this is also uses the same technology, actually, but instead of having blocks, voxel technology, it's been smoothed out and to create these rounder-looking edges and things like that. It's great work by this guy here, Miguel. Okay. City generation. This has piqued my interest at the moment. Something that I've got a criticism about with this here is that it's all flat. There's no context for the city. It doesn't take into account, the economic or political reasons for having that city there, why it's there, the terrain. It's not elevated. And if we look at a history with rich culture and a history and all the rest of it, like Istanbul, if you were to try and procedurally generate something that mimics something like a real-life structure like this, it'd be quite difficult because it's a big mishmash of many different cultures over many years. The next couple of slides are my first delving into procedural content generation. I made a few mazes and things like that. It's not very impressive because the stuff that I've been doing is mainly with source code. It's nowhere near as interesting to look at than perhaps a few pictures. But what I'm working at the moment is being able to go from planet level down to ground level, so we can have these so I can build these kind of worlds that are randomly generated, full of you've got different mountains and things like that, and if you don't like it, you can generate another one or travel to another place and do that. Okay, so again, going back to this idea of being able to customize content, and a lot of this is for video games. Spore was used to make when it first came out, a whole lot of penis monsters and things like that. It's a good example about how a product could be used well outside of the realm of what it was intended. Going back to Skyrim again, you can see in their latest downloadable content, they've introduced procedural content generation to make this idea of infinite quests. So you've got these stories and things like that, like go to location X and kill monster Y sort of thing, and then return back to somewhere else. And so the idea is that the story, the adventure continues on. This gentleman here has been doing a lot of work in taking the same idea of procedural content generation, but instead of restricting it to a computer, taking what's made out and putting it into the real world. So he's saying about these unimaginable shapes that you couldn't really design, mathematically generate these funky shapes and then make them in the real world, which brings me back to Campbell. So it's the idea is not to have this huge framework that you work underneath of this overlying narrative like the Skyrim or something like that, and then having the procedural content just on the side of it. The idea is to be able to build these huge worlds and things like that, have all these sliders, all the different parameters that you want to put in, and generate a universe based on that. That universe might mimic what we understand of our natural world, but it might also be vastly abstract and very different as well. We're only limited by our imaginations and the rules that we set and the parameters of the generation. I think this is my second last slide. Yes. I had a bunch of different punchlines I was going to use this for. I was going to say it's probably going to take a long time for what we build to resemble anything other than a pile of monkey shit, really. But eventually, we've got the technology, we've got the knowledge, we can build this stuff now, so we need to get off our butts and do it, really. Thank you.
And on that happy, inspiring note, we conclude